and welcome to a series of episodes that are all interrelated to a much larger project that I began many years ago, which is being finalized in a book called The Bastille Effect: Sites and Symbols of Political Imprisonment. The Bastille Effect. And that title stems from an imaginary prison that resides in our popular and personal psyche with respect to the Bastille, which was demolished in the course of the French Revolution, still remains a vivid image in what political imprisonment embodies. And this project deals with issues of memory and the reconstruction of detention centers and former prisons that are then repurposed as memorial sites. So in the course of this elaborate series, we're going to draw on my work in Ireland, North and South, South Africa, South Korea, Montreal, and what we're gazing at here is the first installment of my work in Buenos Aires. I was a visiting professor in the Faculty of Law at the University of Buenos Aires in 2017, where I began exploring the many clandestine sites of detention that have been repurposed for public consumption and to exercise and participate in memory and secondary memory, or also known as secondary witnessing. So we're going to do in this episode, and then continue in other episodes, is tour this particular site and then go to other sites in Buenos Aires, and then we are going to travel to Santiago, Chile, and then to Asunción, Paraguay, and then Montevideo in Uruguay. So this image here is the facade of a site known as ESMA, ESMA, which is actually an abbreviation to capture the original purpose of this site, which was a training academy for mechanics for the Argentine Navy. Escuela de Mecánica de la Armada. And those words can be condensed to ESMA. So I will refer to this site as ESMA. Now, just a brief, very brief overview of the controversies that we're exploring in this series is that we begin in Buenos Aires. And just a few numbers that human rights organizers, lawyers, and documents deliver is that the number of people who disappeared during the last dictatorship between 1976 and 1983, the number that is commonly listed is 30,000. And in Buenos Aires and in Argentina, these clandestine detention centers continue to be recovered because oftentimes they were hidden in residential communities and other public buildings, public sites. And it's estimated there are 500 of these clandestine detention, torture, and extermination centers. You'll oftentimes hear the term the dirty war of Argentina. And I want to caution the use of that term because those of us who do human rights research oftentimes refer to this period in Argentina between 19 1976 and 1983 as the last dictatorship. But the term the Dirty War has a history that goes back to French colonial campaigns, particularly in Algeria. And as one Argentine general said publicly, first we kill the subversives, then we kill the collaborators, then their sympathizers, and then those who remain indifferent, and finally we kill the timid. Now, I mention that quote because it captures the scope of extermination, of genocide. And here I have to quote French philosopher Baudrillard, who stated, "Forgetting the extermination is part of the extermination." So I want to establish this particular field work in a larger framework of sightedness. And what we're gazing at is the facade of a building called the Casino. And this was the epicenter of planning from the last dictatorship. And the facade has been repurposed as a memorial. And these are photographs of victims of the last dictatorship who disappeared. And I want to draw attention to this because sightedness is a very important aspect of memorial sites. Because what visitors want to experience or want to witness is authenticity, of truthfulness. So with that introduction, I want to delve into one of a long series of photographs. To be clear, the interior of ESMA, of the Casino, is a reconstruction. This is a former detention, torture, and extermination center. It has been repurposed by human rights organizers and human rights activists, alongside the work and efforts of former detainees and survivors of the last dictatorship. And so it is important that we realize that we are entering into a couple of different temporal modes. We're looking at the past, and we're also looking into the present simultaneously. That is a phenomenological process of experiencing the past and present simultaneously. So when visitors enter this part of ESMA, and now we're beginning at the top floor, the attic. And we know this is a reconstruction for a few reasons. One of which is the floor is a polished walkway, leaving exposed to the left and right compartments where former detainees were held before they were exterminated. Secondary witnessing is an exercise that visitors engage in. Now, one of the reasons why I chose this particular photo is that it is not accompanied by a lot of narration. There are many ways to experience the ESMA Memorial Site. There's a lot of text and placards and posters that one can read. Much of it is in Spanish. However, a lot of it, not all of it, has been translated into the English language, which suggests that the organizers of the ESMA Memorial Site are aware that this is an international attraction, destination for those who want to participate in secondary witnessing of the last dictatorship. And this photograph is, again, the attic of the Casino, that while it was used as a detention center, detainees were held on both sides of this floor. It's very solemn, like much of the rooms and galleries in ESMA. It is a space, a former forbidden space that was clandestine, that was concealed by the last dictatorship. And now it is open to the public. As I write at length in my book, The Bastille Effect, we are exploring the sacred. In cultural sociology, the sacred is one of the binaries that is rivaled by the profane, the polluted, evil, that threatens purity and the sacred. So you're going to hear me oftentimes repeat a lot of these sociological concepts because I use them for purposes of capturing interpretation. And throughout these episodes, you will hear me discuss at length how I interpret these spaces, these sites. And I need to mention at the very onset that interpretation is extremely subjective. We bring our own mental states and consciousness into these sites. And we draw many of our own conclusions. We manage much of our own emotional registers. However, we're also being cued by the museum effect, which is how curators assemble objects, images, text, and space. So as we pause, I just want you to absorb this particular space, and we'll return.